Thanks for joining us on your MTN Statewide News on this Friday. I'm Andrea Lutz. A massive investigation is underway right now in Madison County after a deadly plane crash near Ennis. Small Cessna aircraft went down in mountainous terrain on its way to Jackson, Wyoming from Helena. A passenger was able to call for help. Ground crews found the plane about 4 hours later. According to the FAA, 3 people were on board when it crashed. 1 person did not survive. 2 others were seriously injured. A helicopter was used to take victims from the scene. Montana has now hit over 1,400 active COVID-19 cases, adding 153 just today. Yellowstone County added the highest number with 39 new cases, followed by Flathead and Gallatin County, each with 17. There's also another death in Yellowstone County to tell you about. Health officials reporting a woman in her 80s died of the virus Sunday. Yesterday, 4 deaths were reported in Bighorn County within a 24-hour period. This brings our state's death toll to 60. On Capitol Hill, Dr. Anthony Fauci, along with other members of the White House task force, returned to testify before a House panel. This while stimulus tasks and talks are still at a stalemate as the $600 weekly unemployment benefit ends for millions of Americans. Skylar Henry reports from the White House.
The nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, stressed the need for all Americans to help stop the spread of the coronavirus.
We could do a really good job of controlling it if we paid attention to 5 fundamental principles, one of which is what we're doing here, right, with masks, crowds, distance, bars, washing hands.
Fauci's testimony comes as House lawmakers continue to examine the need for a national plan to contain the outbreak.
I'm calling for the administration to finally give America a comprehensive national plan that prioritizes science over politics.
You wouldn't even be here today if there wasn't a plan, because you are the people tasked with carrying out the plan.
On Thursday, President Trump and Dr. Fauci appeared together for the first time in months at the Red Cross in Washington. Today, Fauci said he's cautiously optimistic a coronavirus vaccine would be ready by the end of the year.
We hope that as the time we get into the late fall and early winter, we will have, in fact, a vaccine that we can say would be safe and effective.
The White House and lawmakers are still at an impasse on a new coronavirus relief package. They've been trading offers to help struggling Americans without reaching a deal.
We've had enough rope-a-dope. We've had enough empty talk. It's time to go on the record.
At this great moment of terrible trouble in our country, our Republican friends are paralyzed.
As of today, the extra $600 federal unemployment benefit has expired, and more than 30 million Americans could see their unemployment checks drop 50 to 75%.
We want to get money to people, and it has to be substantial.
Republicans and the White House are now pushing a short-term extension. Democrats have rejected the idea and say the next relief bill needs to be a complete package. Skylar Henry, CBS News, the White House.
House lawmakers canceled their August recess to work on the coronavirus bill. Another 1.4 million people did file for unemployment benefits just last week. In Montana, $1 million in relief funds is now available to help residents find affordable insurance coverage. Governor Steve Bullock made that announcement just yesterday in Helena. Many Montanans have lost their job as a result of COVID, and along with that, their health insurance. Bullock said the financial burden placed on the uninsured can cost upwards of $20,000. And experts say health insurance can prevent financial ruin for a family and help them get back on their feet. Of course, we've all been seeing the heat make its way across Montana, and Ed is tracking some activity in the sky as well.
That's right. That heat is leading to some thunderstorms, Andrea, especially we've been watching this throughout the morning hours. It's continuing to move off towards the Dakotas now. So eastern Montana fairly active with some thunderstorm activity. And we'll back it up and show you as it started to come through the Fort Peck region early this morning. It started to create some stronger storms that start to slide off towards the Dakotas. They've been losing a little bit of their energy as they've been going, but still creating some areas where you see the silver or the yellow flashes in this case are lightning, and then in the blue some areas of hail. And in addition to the hail and the lightning, we've also got some wind gusts that have been topping 50 miles per hour. The forecast details are coming up in a few minutes.
All right, thanks, Ed. Democratic candidate for governor Mike Cooney released a new plan he says will help Montanans recover from the economic shock of the coronavirus. His proposal would require companies getting state and public contracts to hire 75% of their workers from Montana. His opponent, Republican candidate Greg Gianforte, released his economic blueprint just 2 weeks ago. He wants less government to let the private sector grow. But Cooney believes the government can play a crucial role in helping the economy bounce back.
And for us to say government does not have a role to play, I think is just wrong-headed, because government can very well, and there's a long record of government being a good partner when it comes to working with private sector, working with the federal government, working with other partners in order to grow and expand the economy. And as governor, I'm going to be doing that.
Cooney's plan also calls for expansion of rural broadband, more funding for increased child care, and training for workers in renewable energy. Well, July was a tough month for oil producers, especially those in the Williston Basin. Earlier this month, North Dakota reported a 30% drop in its oil production. But there's hope coming in the form of the CARES Act funding. The Bakken Restart program will use $30 million to help plug more than 400 oil wells that were orphaned during the pandemic. The program is designed to help retain oil sector jobs. But for now, producers are forced to wait for prices to go back up. Right now, the price of oil is hovering around $40 a barrel. Well, the drive to bring a passenger rail service back to the southern route of Montana is officially underway. Thursday's approval comes a year after the Missoula County Commissioners began talking with other counties about bringing a passenger rail service back to southern Montana. It's been 40 years since Amtrak cut passenger rail service to Billings, Bozeman, and Missoula, and the idea is to restore that route, adding one change through Helena and then continuing onto the coast through the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority. The Montana Historical Society receives $50,000 to produce a short documentary on historic African American experiences in Montana. The grant is from the National Trust of Preservation. The doc will include oral histories, places, and new research. It's a part of the Historical Society's African American Heritage Resources Project. The 16-year-long project will turn into a 15-minute documentary. They hope to have it completed sometime in August. Just ahead on the noon news, a story about what it's like to live on top of a mountain, being a lookout for summer wildfires. The views are incredible. But first, Ed is coming up next with a look at that statewide weather forecast.
Well on our way. We talked about this storm cell here at the top of the newscast, and that will continue to influence the weather in the eastern plains. It's also driving those humidity numbers up considerably once we get to the eastern edge of Montana, but we're mainly looking at a mix of 20s, 30s, and a few 40s. Otherwise, the humidity isn't extremely low, and there is enough moisture to give enough fuel to trap a few showers or thunderstorms into the forecast, but also create a bit of wind. We've got some breezy conditions down the east slopes of the Rockies. We're only talking about maybe 20-mile-per-hour wind gusts. The exception, the area where we see those stronger storms off into eastern Montana. So there's still a lot of lightning. We've had reports of up to nickel-sized hail there and wind gusts to around 40 miles an hour to 50 miles an hour. And this area will continue to be the big influenced area for shower thunderstorm activity through this afternoon. That storm system is going to continue to edge down towards South Dakota as we get later in the day. For western Montana, a totally different picture where we have a heat advisory into effect for around Hamilton, Missoula, up towards the north, including the Flathead Valley, where temperatures could be well into the 90s, even triple digits, and then the humidity numbers just a little bit higher there. So it's going to make it feel very uncomfortable for you as we start getting into the afternoon. So thunderstorms here, heat pretty much everywhere else under the influence of this big high pressure area. So this disturbance will act as the trigger for a few of those showers and thunderstorms for this afternoon. They'll be fairly limited through the afternoon, but we'll be watching those for those gusty winds and small hail. As we get into tomorrow, we'll look for isolated storms for the higher elevations. That heat advisory will linger for you in northwest Montana, but otherwise It's basically back up into the 80s and 90s for the daytime highs for one more afternoon. And as we start getting towards the tail end of the weekend, a couple of disturbances come together, and this looks fairly active, but really we're going to be limiting those showers and thunderstorms mainly to the high elevations and continue to hold on to those warmer than average temperatures under this high pressure ridge. It's getting into the middle of next week before we start to see a significant change. So today, temperatures will be the hottest in this area from around Missoula northward, looking for the influence of those few showers and thunderstorms lingering into the eastern plains, and that could cause some stronger outflow winds. We're already starting to see that here as of midday. Those blue arrows indicating where some of that wind could develop. The overnight temperatures will slip down into the 50s and 60s, pretty close to where the mornings have been here recently, and generally clear to mostly clear. And then tomorrow, it's 80s and 90s for the daytime highs region-wide. Chance of stronger storms as we start looking through northern Wyoming, with a few isolated storms coming off, especially the mountains. A few of the foothill locations could see that develop as well. So temperatures overall very warm, looking at the possibility of 95 to 100 around Kalispell and Missoula today, and staying that way until we start getting into early next week. Great Falls and Helena, temperatures hold into the mid-90s pretty consistently through the weekend. And again, we'll see that little bit of a downturn, especially by Tuesday into next Wednesday. And that could bring around an isolated shower or thunderstorm. Butte and Bozeman also looking at a warm weekend and then backing off a little bit as we start getting into the first part of the week. And the overnight temperatures stay mainly in the 50s. And for areas in the eastern plains, Glendive and Billings looking at consistently warm temperatures, maybe just a little cooler with those thunderstorms around in northeastern Montana today. There's a look at the weather. Back to you, Andrea.
All right, thanks, Ed, for that. When wildfires start in Montana's most remote areas, some are watching from the mountaintops to provide a first warning. They spend their summers as fire lookouts. MTN's Jonathan Anbarian tells us why their jobs are so important.
4 years ago, Levi Brinegar says he was working in a Pennsylvania steel mill when he got an email that changed everything for him.
It was like, live on top of a mountain by yourself, spot fires, and I'm like, yes, please.
Since 2016, Brinegar has made his home for the summer at the Stonewall Mountain Lookout, a wood and cinder block tower in the mountains north of Lincoln. For about 3 months each summer, he's keeping an eye out for any sign of smoke. The Fire Lookout's main piece of equipment is this, the Osborne Fire Finder, a tool more than 100 years old. When someone sees a column of smoke, they rotate the disc, then use this sight to determine exactly what direction the fire is coming from.
You call that into what we call Helena Fire Desk. What they're also going to want to know is the color of the smoke, the drift, where the smoke is drifting off, rough size, if it's 1/10 of an acre, if it's an acre, sky weather, if it looks like there's a cell coming in, wind speed, wind direction.
Forest Service leaders say having a live lookout is one of their best tools for finding a fire and putting it out when it's small, before it threatens communities.
More than a satellite going over, it's that person being able to determine what's the difference between climatic conditions causing steam rising above a treetop versus what's actually smoke. It's the lookout, that a trained lookout, that can figure that out, get our firefighters to that place they need to be quickly.
The Helena Lewis and Clark National Forest currently staffs 5 lookouts: Stonewall, Porphyry Peak north of White Sulphur Springs, and Patrol Mountain, Prairie Reef, and Bear Top along the Rocky Mountain front. A 6th tower, Granite Butte, southeast of Lincoln, is currently rented to the public. But if fire conditions become bad enough, Forest Service leaders are considering putting it back into service with a lookout. Leaders say beyond the reports lookouts provide, they also have symbolic value.
To have somebody stationed sitting above a community watching out for it is a powerful symbol.
The lookout job isn't right for everyone, but for those cut out for it, there are plenty of benefits to the isolated location, from frequent wildlife visits to dramatic weather. Brinegar says he'll keep doing his part to make sure the tradition continues.
You find peace within yourself when you're up here. With everything going on right now, this is the best place to be. People envy that I have this job. I don't think I'll ever give it up.
In Lincoln, Jonathan Anbarian, MTN News.
360-degree views of pure Montana bliss is probably what that is. Your latest Ag News is coming up next.
Farm and Ranch Report from the Montana Ag Network.
Welcome back for today's Farm and Ranch News. Well, the Beef Industry Long Range Plan Task Force officially introduced its new 5-year plan at the Cattle Industry Summer Business Meeting that was held in Denver. Updated every 5 years, the plan is designed to help the beef industry establish a common set of objectives and priorities to increase the demand for beef.
Our plan is a 5-year plan, and it's been going on every 5 years since 1995. So it's very important that we gather as much current information and knowledge from people that deal in all those different arenas. The idea was for us to look at what we thought is, it's considered a SWOT analysis, it's called, in long-range planning. And that has to do with the strengths and the weaknesses and the opportunities and the threats that we see in our industry, and trying to be honest with ourselves about what those are.
The task force is focusing on 4 objectives and priorities. They include growing global demand for U.S. beef by promoting beef's health and nutritional benefits, improving industry-wide profitability by expanding processing capacity and developing improved value capture models, intensifying efforts in researching, improving, and communicating U.S. beef industry sustainability, and making traceability a reality in the U.S. beef industry. The core of these objectives are based on sound science and research to increase the overall consumption of U.S. beef.
We have to deliver that message. We have to make sure it's based on good science, and this industry is doing a great job of that, and that's never ending. So it just changes as we go along from time to time, and we expand on that. But you know, our beef demand from 1999, using that as a base point 0, we had been declining for many, many years. In 1999, it turned around, went the other way, and using that as 100% in 1999, today we're about a 121% beef demand. And that's due to long-range planning.
The Beef Industry Long Range Task Force is made up of 15 leaders from all aspects of the industry. Montana's very own Joe Goggins serves on the task force that works to help grow demand for beef here at home and across the world. We'll be right back. The Stillwater Valley Watershed Council works to sustain the rural quality of life to protect and enhance natural resources, with efforts focused on encouraging noxious weed control through cost-share programs along the Stillwater River and other areas. The group is holding their annual barbecue and fundraiser coming up in Absarka on August 6th.
We have an annual fundraiser each year, more as a celebration to the community, and that's how it started. And then we kind of morphed into having an auction, and this is our second year of having some entertainment, so we'll have the High Country Cowboys. It's a community celebration that helps raise funds for these cost-share programs and allows us to continue with what we're doing in the instances that we may never be able to have grant funding. We like to have support from the community as a buy-in, as well as to help with down the road, the future, and help us be sustainable so that we can continue our projects with or without grant funding, if that's ever the case.
The council will also host a river float and weed pull on August 9th. More information can be found at stillwatervalleywatershed.com. That's today's Farm and Ranch News.
Okay, and just enough time left for you, Ed, to give us a look at that weather.
Yeah, we've got temperatures going to continue to be very warm. We do have some thunderstorm activity in the eastern plains today for Kalispell and Missoula. The hottest temperatures in the region for this afternoon. A heat advisory into effect, so if you can take safe cover, that's a pretty good idea for this afternoon. That's really going to be the warmest area, especially with the humidity up a bit. A lot of 90s around Great Falls and Helena through the weekend and into early next week. We see only a little bit of relief by the time we get into Tuesday and Wednesday. Same thing around Butte and Bozeman. The overnight temperatures, the air is dry enough that things cool down a bit into the evening hours, so you have a chance to at least cool the house off a little bit. And then around Glendive and Billings, those temperatures very warm through the weekend, but we'll start to see slight relief, especially around Billings by the middle of the week.
Okay, thanks, Ed, for that. And thanks for joining us today on the Noon News. Have a great weekend.